Mary Collins pressed her face against the cold train window and watched the snow fall harder with each passing mile. The train was moving slowly now, fighting against the wind that pushed the snow across the tracks like white sand. She had been traveling for 3 days, and her body ached from sitting on the hard wooden seat. Her small leather bag sat on her lap, holding everything she owned in the world. The other passengers had gotten off at earlier stops, leaving Mary alone in the train car with just the conductor and her own nervous thoughts. She pulled out the letter from her coat pocket for the 100th time. The paper was soft now from being folded and unfolded so many times. She knew every word by heart, but reading it again made her feel less alone. Dear Miss Collins, the letter began in neat handwriting. I received your response to my advertisement with great pleasure. I am a widower with 3 young children who need a mother's care. My ranch is small, but provides a good living. I am looking for a woman of good character who can help me raise my children and share the work of frontier life, if you are willing. To come west and marry me, I will send money for your train ticket. Mary had written back immediately. Life in Boston had become impossible after the factory where she worked making ladies' dresses had closed down. Her small room cost more money than she could earn doing odd sewing jobs. She was 24 years old and had no family left after her parents died of fever 2 years before. The idea of a new start in Wyoming seemed like an answer to her prayers. William Parker had sent her enough money for the train ticket and a little extra for food during the journey. His letters over the past 6 months had been kind and respectful. He wrote about his children, Lucy, who was 8, Samuel, who was 6, and little Benjamin, who was 4. Their mother had died giving birth to Benjamin, and William had been raising them alone ever since. The children need a woman's gentle touch, he had written. I am not good with the soft words and tender care that children require. I can provide food and shelter, but I cannot give them the love that only a mother can give. Mary had never been married and had no children of her own. But she had helped raise her younger brother before he died of the same fever that took their parents. She knew how to cook and clean and mend clothes. She could read and write, which was more than many women on the frontier could do. Most importantly, she had love to give to children who needed it. The train whistle blew long and loud, and Mary felt her stomach jump with excitement and fear. The conductor walked through the car, calling out Cedar Falls. Next stop, Cedar Falls. Mary gathered her courage in her small bag. This was it. Her new life was about to begin. The train pulled into the station with a great hissing of steam and grinding of metal wheels. Mary stood up on shaky legs and walked to the door. The conductor helped her down the steps onto the wooden platform. The cold air hit her face like a slap, and she pulled her thin coat tighter around her body. The snow was falling so hard that Mary could barely see across the small platform. She looked around for a tall man with a dark beard, just like William had described himself in his letters. There were only a few people at the station, and none of them looked like they were waiting for her. An old man in a heavy coat was loading bags onto a wagon. A woman with 2 small children hurried past without looking at Mary. Mary stood there as the train pulled away, leaving her alone on the platform with the snow falling all around her. She waited and waited, but no one came to meet her. The cold wind cut through her coat like it was made of paper. Her feet began to hurt from standing on the frozen ground. The old man with the wagon walked over to her. He had kind eyes and a gray beard covered with snow. Miss, you look lost, he said. Are you waiting for someone? Yes, Mary said, her voice shaking from cold and worry. I am Mary Collins. I came from Boston to marry William Parker. He was supposed to meet me here? The old man frowned. I am Pete Morrison. I work here at the station. I know most folks around these parts, but I have not seen William Parker in town for weeks. Maybe longer. Mary felt her heart sink. Had William changed his mind? Had something happened to him? She had spent all her money on the train ticket and had nowhere else to go. What should I do? She asked Pete Morrison. I have no money to go back to Boston, and I do not know anyone here. Pete looked at the snow falling harder and harder. The wind was getting stronger, and it was getting dark. You cannot stay out here in this weather, he said. You will freeze to death before morning. Come inside the station. "It is not much, but it is warm and dry." Pete led Mary into the small wooden building that served as the train station. There was a bench, a desk, and a small wood stove that filled the room with blessed warmth. Mary sat down on the bench and tried not to cry. Everything she had hoped for seemed to be falling apart before it had even begun. "Do not worry too much yet," Pete told her as he added wood to the stove. "Maybe William got held up by the weather. These winter storms can trap a man for days. Maybe he will come tomorrow when the snow stops." Mary nodded, but she had a bad feeling in her stomach. Something was wrong. She could feel it. But she had no choice except to wait and hope that Pete Morrison was right. She pulled her coat around her like a blanket and settled in for a long, cold night, wondering what tomorrow would bring and if her journey west had been a terrible mistake. Mary woke up when the first light of morning came through the small window of the train station. Her back hurt from sleeping on the hard wooden bench, and her neck was stiff. No. The fire in the stove had gone out during the night, and the room was cold again. She could hear Pete Morrison moving around outside, probably getting ready to open the station for the day. The snow had stopped falling, but everything outside was covered in white. The world looked clean and bright, but also empty and cold. Mary stood up and stretched her sore muscles. She looked out the window, hoping to see William Parker riding up to the station on his horse. But the road was empty, except for the deep snow. Pete came inside, carrying an armload of wood. "Good morning, Miss Collins," he said. "Did you sleep at all?" Little Mary said. "Thank you for letting me stay here. I do not know what I would have done." Pete started building a new fire. In the stove, "I have been thinking about your situation all night," he said. "I think we should go out to the Parker Ranch and see what has happened. Something is not right. William Parker is not the kind of man to leave a lady waiting at the station." Mary felt both hope and fear at the same time. She wanted to find William and understand why he had not come to meet her. But she was also afraid of what they might find. What if he had decided he did not want to marry her after all? What if he had found someone else? "How far is it to his ranch?" Mary asked. "About 2 hours by wagon," Pete said. "The roads will be bad after all this snow, but my horse is strong. We can make it if we start soon." Mary nodded. She had to know what had happened. Sitting in the station and wondering would drive her crazy. "I am ready to go whenever you are." Pete finished lighting the fire, then went outside to get his wagon and horse ready. Mary gathered her small bag and put on her coat. Her hand shook as she buttoned it up. She did not know if she was shaking from the cold or from fear of what they might find. The wagon ride was long and bumpy. The horse had to work hard to pull them through the deep snow. Mary held on tight as the wagon rocked back and forth. Pete did not talk much during the ride. He was busy watching the road and guiding the horse around the worst spots as they got farther from town. Mary saw how empty and wild this country was. There were no houses or people anywhere, just endless white fields and dark trees. She had never been so far from other people in her whole life. The silence was so complete that it felt heavy, like something pressing down on her chest. "There it is," Pete said finally, pointing ahead. Mary looked and saw a small wooden house sitting alone in a valley. There was a barn next to it, and a fence. Around a yard, smoke should have been coming from the chimney, but there was none. The whole place looked dead and empty. As they got closer, Mary could see that something was very wrong. The front door of the house was standing wide open, moved back and forth in the wind, banging against the wall. No one would leave their door open in winter unless something terrible had happened. Pete stopped the wagon in front of the house. "Stay here for a minute," he told Mary. "Let me look inside first." But Mary could not stay in the wagon. She had to see for herself what had happened to the man she had come so far to marry. She climbed down and followed Pete to the open door. The smell hit her first. It was the smell of a house where people had been living without cleaning or cooking proper meals. Pete stepped inside and Mary followed him. The house was dark and cold. There was no fire in the fireplace, and frost covered the windows on the inside. Then Mary heard something that made her heart stop. It was a small sound, like a whimper or a cry. It came from the corner of the room where it was darkest. "Hello," Pete called out. "Is someone there?" The sound came again, and then Mary saw them. Three small shapes huddled together on the floor near the cold fireplace. They were covered with a dirty blanket that was too thin to keep them warm. Mary could see their faces now, 2 boys and a girl, all very young, and all looking at her. With big scared eyes. "Oh my God," Mary whispered. She dropped her bag and ran to the children. "Are you Lucy?" Samuel Benjamin. The oldest child, a girl with tangled blonde hair, nodded. "Yes," she said, in a voice so quiet Mary could barely hear her. "Are you the lady from the letters? Are you going to be our new mama?" Mary knelt down next to the children. They were so thin she could see the bones in their faces. Their clothes were dirty and torn. The little boy Benjamin was shivering so hard his whole body shook. "Where is your father?" Mary asked gently. "He went to town," Lucy said. "He said he would come back soon." "But that was a long time ago. We have been waiting and waiting." "How long?" Pete asked from behind Mary. Lucy looked confused. "Do not." "No," she said. "Many days. We ran out of food, and the fire went out. We did not know how to make it start again." Mary felt tears come to her eyes. These poor children had been left alone in the cold with no food and no way to take care of themselves. Where was William Parker? How could he leave his children like this? "When did you last eat?" Mary asked. "Yesterday we found some bread that was hard," Samuel said, "but we ate it all." Mary looked around the house. She could see now that it had been a nice home once, but now it was a mess. Dirty dishes were piled everywhere. Clothes were scattered on the floor. The place smelled like no one had cleaned it in weeks. Pete found a piece of paper on the table. "Look at this," he said, handing it to Mary. The paper had writing on it in the same handwriting as the letters William had sent her. "Gone to town for supplies," it said. "Back soon. Be good children." But when had he written it? And why had he not come back? Mary looked at the 3 hungry cold children and felt something change inside her heart. Whatever had happened to William Parker, these children needed help right now. They needed food and warmth and someone to take care of them. "I have to get them warm and fed," Mary said to Pete. "Right now," Pete nodded. "I will get some wood and start a fire. You see what food you can find?" Mary stood up and began looking through the kitchen. She found some flour and a few potatoes that were not too old to eat. Well, it was not much, but it would have to do. These children had been abandoned and forgotten, but she was here now. She would not let them suffer anymore. Mary worked quickly to make a simple meal for the children, while Pete got the fire started. The flames began to warm the cold house, and she could see the children's faces more clearly now. They watched her every move with hungry eyes, like little animals who had learned not to trust that food would come. She mixed flour with water to make simple biscuits and boiled the potatoes in a pot she found in the kitchen. It was not much of a meal, but it was hot and filling. When she set the food in front of the children, they ate so fast that Mary worried they would make themselves sick. "Slow down," she said gently. "There is enough for everyone. You do not have to hurry." Little Benjamin stopped eating and looked up at her with tears in his dark eyes. "Are you going to leave us too?" he asked. The question hit Mary like a punch in the stomach. She knelt down next to the 4-year-old boy and touched his dirty face. "I'm not going anywhere right now," she said. "You are safe." But even as she said the words, Mary knew they might not be true. She had come here to marry William Parker, but William Parker was nowhere to be found. She had no legal right to these children. She had no money and no way to take care of them. What was she supposed to do? Pete pulled her aside while the children finished eating. "Miss Collins," he said quietly, "we need to talk about what happens next." Mary looked at the 3 small faces around the table. Lucy was helping Benjamin eat his biscuit. Samuel was still shivering even though the fire was warming the room. They looked so young and helpless. "What do you think happened to their father?" Mary asked. Pete shook his head. "Hard to say, could be anything out here. Maybe he got caught in a storm. Maybe he had an accident. Maybe he just decided he could not handle being a father anymore and ran off." Ran off? Mary could not believe anyone would abandon their children like that. "It happens more than you might think," Pete said sadly. "Frontier life is hard. Some men just break under the pressure, start drinking too much, or they just walk away from everything." Mary felt sick thinking about it. But these are his children. How could he just leave them? I do not know, Pete said. But the fact is, he did leave them. And now we have to decide what to do about it. Mary knew what Pete was going to say next, and she did not want to hear it. Miss Collins, you need to come back to town with me, Pete continued. I will send word to the territorial government about these children. I will send someone to take them to the orphanage in Cheyenne. Orphanage. Mary looked at the children again. She had heard terrible stories about orphanages. Too many children, not enough food, no one to give them love or attention. Children died in those places. It is not what any of us want, Pete said. But what else can we do? You came here to get married, not to take care of someone else's children. You have no money, no way to support them, and winter is just starting. It will get much colder before spring comes. Mary knew Pete was right. The smart thing to do was to go back to town and let the government handle the situation. She could take the next train back to Boston and try to rebuild her life there. Maybe she could find work in another factory. Maybe she could find a room to rent and start over, but every time she looked at the children, she felt something pulling at her heart. Benjamin had fallen asleep in his chair, his little head resting on the table. Lucy was trying to clean Samuel's face with a wet rag she had found. They were trying so hard to take care of each other. What will happen to them in the orphanage? Mary asked. Pete did not answer right away. When he did speak, his voice was sad. They will be separated, he said. Boys and girls do not stay together. Lucy will go to one place, the boys to another. Maybe they will be adopted by families, maybe not. Benjamin is young, so he has a better chance. But Lucy and Samuel— Pete did not finish, but Mary understood. Older children were harder to place. They might spend years in the orphanage, or they might be sent to work for families who wanted free labor more than they wanted. Children to love. Mary stood up and walked to the window. The sun was starting to set, and the snow looked pink in. The evening light was beautiful, but it was also cold and dangerous. This was no place for a woman alone with 3 children and no money. But then she heard Benjamin wake up and start crying. Lucy went to him right away, wrapping her thin arms around her little brother. It is okay, Benny, she whispered. Do not cry. I am here. Mary turned around and really looked at the 3 children. Lucy was only 8 years old, but she was trying to be a mother to her brothers. Samuel was trying to be brave, but she could see he was scared. And Benjamin was just a baby who needed someone to hold him and tell him everything would be all right. These children had already lost their mother, and their father had abandoned them. Now Mary was supposed to walk away too. She was supposed to let them be separated and sent to strangers who might not care if they lived or died. No, Mary said out loud. Pete looked at her. What did you say? I said no. Mary's voice was stronger now. I am not going to leave them, Miss Collins. You do not understand what you are saying. You cannot take care of 3 children by yourself. You have no money, no experience with farming or ranching. Winter out here will kill you all. Mary walked back to the table where the children were sitting. She looked at each of their faces. Lucy with her serious blue eyes, Samuel with his worried frown, Benjamin with his tear-stained cheeks. I came here to find a family, Mary said. Maybe not the family I expected, but a family just the same. She knelt down, so she was at eye level with the children. Would you like me to stay and take care of you? She asked. Lucy nodded so hard that her tangled hair bounced. Yes, please, she whispered. We will be good, Samuel added quickly. We promise we will be good. Benjamin just reached out and grabbed Mary's hand with his small fingers. Mary felt tears come to her eyes. But they were not sad tears. For the first time since she had stepped off the train, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Then it is settled, she said. I am staying. Pete shook his head. Miss Collins, you are making a big mistake. You have no idea what you are getting yourself into. Mary stood up and looked at him. Maybe you are right, she said. But these children need someone, and I am here. I cannot just walk away from them. What about money? What about food and supplies? Mary thought about the small amount of money she had hidden in her bag. It would not last long, but it might be enough to get them through until she could figure something else out. I will find a way, she said. I have to. Pete looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. "You are either very brave or very foolish," he said. Mary smiled for the first time since she had arrived in Wyoming, maybe both. The first week was the hardest of Mary's life. After Pete Morrison left to go back to town, she was alone with 3 frightened children in a house that felt more like a broken shelter than a home. The wind howled around the small building at night and snow piled up against the windows. Mary had never felt so far away from everything she knew. The children did not trust her at first. They had been disappointed too many times. Lucy watched Mary's every move with careful eyes, waiting for her to pack her bag and leave, like their father had done. Samuel hid under the table whenever Mary tried to talk to him. Benjamin cried every time Mary left the room, even just to get water from the well. Mary had to learn everything from the beginning. She had lived in the city all her life, where food came from stores and heat came from coal delivered to the building. Here, she had to figure out how to milk the cow that William Parker had left behind. The cow was mean and kicked at her at the first few times she tried. Mary got more milk on herself than in the bucket. The chickens were even worse. They pecked at her hands when she tried to collect eggs, and they seemed to know she had no idea what she was doing. One morning, she opened the chicken coop, and all 6 chickens ran out into the snow. It took her and the children 2 hours to catch them all and get them back inside. "Papa used to throw corn at them," Lucy said, watching Mary chase a chicken. "Around the yard, they come back when they are hungry." Mary stopped running and looked at the little girl. It was the first time Lucy had spoken about her father without crying. "Can you show me how he did it?" Mary asked. Lucy nodded and took Mary to the barn where bags of corn were stored. She showed Mary how much to give the chickens and when to feed them. Samuel showed her which eggs were good and which ones were too old to eat. Even little Benjamin helped by pointing to the chicken that laid the most eggs. Slowly, Mary began to understand that the children knew more about taking care of the ranch than she did. They'd been watching their father work for years. They just had not been big enough or strong enough to do the work by themselves. "We can help you," Lucy said one evening as they sat around the fire. "Papa taught us lots of things before he got sad all the time." Mary learned that William Parker had started drinking heavily after his wife died. At first, he still worked the ranch and took care of his children. But as time went on, he spent more time in town at the saloon and less time at home. The children had learned to take care of themselves because their father was not able to do it anymore. He used to read us stories, Samuel said quietly. Before Mama died, he would read to us every night. Mary found the books on a shelf covered with dust. That night, she read to the children from a book of fairy tales. Benjamin fell asleep in her lap, and Lucy and Samuel sat close to her on either side. The first time, the house felt like a real home, but Mary still worried about money. Counted the coins in her bag every night. She had enough to buy food for maybe 2 more weeks. But then what? She did not know how to sell the eggs or milk in town. She did not even know how to get to town by herself. One morning, she heard a wagon coming up the road to the house. Mary felt scared. What if it was someone coming to take the children away? What if it was William Parker coming back and angry that she was living in his house? But when she looked out the window, she saw Pete Morrison climbing down from his wagon. He had a woman with her, a tall woman with gray hair and a kind face. "Miss Collins," Pete called out, "I brought someone to meet you," says Helen Baker. "She lives on the ranch next to this one." Helen Baker looked at Mary with sharp but friendly eyes. "So you are the mail-order bride who decided to stay and raise 3 children she never met before," she said. Mary felt her face get red. "Yes, ma'am." Helen smiled. "Pete told me what you did. I think you are either crazy or a saint. Maybe both." Helen had brought food, fresh bread, milk, eggs, and vegetables from her own ranch. "My husband and I have been worried about these children. Since William started his drinking," she said, "we live 5 miles away, or we would have checked on them sooner." "Did you know William Parker well?" Mary asked. "Known him since he was a boy," Helen said. "He was a good man before his wife died. The grief just broke something inside him. Some men can handle loss, and some men cannot." Helen spent the day teaching Mary things she needed to know. She showed her how to preserve food for the winter, how to make soap from lye and fat, how to patch clothes so they would last longer. Most importantly, She showed Mary how to budget the small amount of money she had. "You need to make this money last until spring," Helen said. "Then you can start selling eggs and milk to people in town. Maybe you can take in sewing work, I heard. You used to make dresses back in Boston." Mary felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. Maybe she really could make this work. But then Pete Morrison told her something that made her heart sink. "Miss Collins, there is something you need to know. I sent word to the territorial authorities about the children, like I said I would. They are sending someone to investigate." "What does that mean?" Mary asked. "It means someone from the government will come to decide what should happen to Lucy, Samuel, and Benjamin. They might decide the children should go to the orphanage after all." Mary felt panic rise in her chest. "But I am taking good care of them. They are healthy and happy. I know that," Pete said. "But you have no legal right to keep them. Not married to William Parker, you are not related to the children. In the eyes of the law, you are just a stranger." That night, Mary lay awake listening to the children sleep. Lucy and Benjamin shared the big bed, and Samuel slept on a small cot nearby. They looked so peaceful, so safe. The thought of someone taking them away made Mary feel sick. She got up quietly and walked to the window. The snow was falling again, soft and quiet in the moonlight. She thought about her old life in Boston, the crowded boarding house, the long days at the factory, the loneliness of having no family. Here, even with all the hard work and worry, she felt like she belonged somewhere. The children needed her, and she needed them. They were becoming a real family, even though they had started as strangers. But would that be enough to convince the government officials? Would they let her keep the children, or would they tear apart the family she was trying so hard to build? Right. Pressed her face against the cold glass and made a promise to herself. She would fight for these children. She would do whatever it took to keep them safe and together. They had already lost too much. She would not let them lose anything more. The government man arrived on a cold Tuesday morning in March. Mary saw him coming from the kitchen window, a thin man in a black coat riding in an official wagon. Her hands shook as she dried the breakfast dishes. This was the moment she had been dreading for weeks. The man knocked on the door with loud, sharp sounds. Mary opened it and saw a stern face with cold, gray eyes. He was older than she had expected, with silver hair and lines around his mouth that made him look like he never smiled. "Miss Collins, I am Judge Henry Clark from the Territorial Court," he said. "I am here to investigate the situation with the Parker children." Mary invited him inside, though every part of her wanted to slam the door and run away with the children. Judge Clark looked around the house with eyes that seemed to see everything. Mary was glad she had spent the morning cleaning and making. Sure, everything looked perfect. The children were sitting at the table where Mary had told them to wait. They looked scared and confused. Benjamin was holding his favorite wooden horse, the one Mary had carved for him from a piece of wood. "She found in the barn, children," Judge Clark said in a voice that was not unkind but not warm either. "I need to ask you some questions. Will you answer them honestly?" Lucy nodded for all three of them. She was the oldest and always spoke for her brothers when strangers came around. "Are you Lucy Parker?" the judge asked. "Yes, sir." "And these are your brothers, Samuel and Benjamin?" "Sir, where's your father?" Lucy looked at Mary, then back at the judge. "He went away. We do not know where he is." Judge Clark wrote something in a small book he carried. "How long has Miss Collins been taking care of you?" "Since the snow was deep," Lucy said. "She came when we were very hungry and cold. She made us food and kept us warm." The judge turned to Mary. "Miss Collins, you understand that you have no legal right to these children." Mary felt her heart beating fast, but she kept her voice steady. "Yes, sir, I understand that. Then why did you stay? Why did you not report the situation to the authorities and return to your home in Boston?" Ouch. Sitting at the table, Benjamin was watching her with his big dark eyes. Samuel was biting his lip the way he did when he was worried. Lucy was trying to look brave, but Mary could see she was scared, because they needed someone, Mary said simply. They were alone and frightened, and I could not walk away from them. That is admirable, Judge Clark said, but good intentions are not enough. These children need proper care, education, and a secure future. Can you provide those things? Before Mary could answer, there was another knock at the door. Mary opened it to find Helen Baker standing on the porch, along with several other people from the area. Behind them was Pete Morrison and Dr. Adams, the traveling doctor who came through town once a month. Judge Clark, Helen said, walking into the house without waiting to be invited. We heard you were here to investigate Miss Collins and the children. The judge frowned. This is an official proceeding, Mrs. Baker. I do not need witnesses. Maybe. Not, Helen said, but those children do. We are here to speak for them. Dr. Adams stepped forward. Your Honor, I examined these children when I heard about their situation. When I first saw them in December, they were malnourished, sick, and traumatized. Look at them now. The judge looked at the children again. Mary could see him noticing things, how healthy they looked, how clean their clothes were, how Lucy sat protectively near her brothers, but was not afraid to look adults in the eye. Miss Collins has done more than keep them alive, Dr. Adams continued. She has helped them heal from the abandonment and neglect they suffered. Benjamin was not speaking at all when I first met him. Now he talks and plays like a normal child. Pete Morrison spoke up next. Judge Clark, I was the one who found these children with Miss Collins. I have been checking on them all winter. That woman has worked harder than any person I have ever seen. She learned to run a ranch, take care of livestock, and raise 3 children all at the same time. She did it with no help and almost no money. Helen Baker reached into her bag and pulled out a piece of paper. This is a letter signed by 12 families in this area, she said. We all support Miss Collins keeping these children. We have seen how much she loves them and how much they love her. Judge Clark took the letter and read it carefully. Mary could not tell what he was thinking. Furthermore, Helen continued, if the court is worried about Miss Collins being able to support the children, she will not be alone. We are prepared to help her. My husband has offered her work sewing for families in the area. The Johnsons need someone to help with their store accounts. Miss Collins can read and write better than most people around here. She will not be a burden on anyone. The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at the children again. Lucy, do you want to stay with Miss Collins? Yes, sir, Lucy said without hesitation. She takes care of us. She reads us stories and teaches us letters. She makes us feel safe. Samuel, what about you? Samuel looked at Mary, then at the judge. She is our mama now, he said in his quiet voice. She said she would never leave us, and she did not leave us. Judge Clark knelt down in front of Benjamin. And you, young man, do you want Miss Collins to be your mama? Benjamin nodded so hard his whole body moved. Then he ran to Mary and wrapped his arms around her legs. My mama, he said loudly. Mine. Mary felt tears come to her eyes. She picked up Benjamin and held him close. Lucy and Samuel came and stood next to her, one on each side. Judge Clark stood up and looked at the group of people crowded into the small house. He looked at Mary holding Benjamin, with Lucy and Samuel pressed close to her. He looked at the clean house, the warm fire, the evidence of a family that was poor in money, but rich in love. Miss Collins, he said finally, this is highly irregular. You came here as a mail-order bride, but the man you were supposed to marry has disappeared. You have no legal claim to these children, no family connection, no established means of support. Mary felt her heart sink. He was going to take the children away. But then Judge Clark smiled, the first time Mary had seen any warmth in his face. However, he continued, it is clear that these children are thriving in your care. They are healthy, happy, and obviously devoted to you. The community supports you, and you have shown remarkable dedication and love. He pulled out an official-looking paper from his coat. I am prepared to grant you legal guardianship of Lucy, Samuel, and Benjamin Parker. With the provision that the community continues to support you and that you allow regular visits to ensure the children's welfare, Mary could not believe what she was hearing. You mean? I mean, these children are yours, Miss Collins, or should I say, Mrs. Parker. I am also prepared to grant you ownership of this property as compensation for the care you have provided to the abandoned children. The house erupted in cheers from the neighbors who had come to support Mary. Lucy and Samuel hugged her tight, and Benjamin clapped his hands and laughed. Mary felt like her heart might burst from happiness. That night, after everyone had gone home and the children were asleep, Mary sat by the fire and thought about the journey that had brought her here. She had come to Wyoming looking for a husband and found something much more precious. A family that needed her as much as she needed them. She looked at the 3 sleeping children who were now legally hers. Lucy had grown from a frightened, serious little girl into a confident child who helped teach her brothers their letters. Samuel had stopped hiding and started talking about his dreams of becoming a teacher like his mama. Benjamin had gone from a traumatized baby to a happy little boy who filled the house with laughter. Mary smiled and added another log to the fire. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. It always did on the frontier. But whatever came, they would face it together as a real family. She had kept her promise to never leave them. Now no one could ever take them away from her. The mail-order bride who had found 3 cold, hungry children instead of a husband had become exactly what she was always meant to be, a mother.